Namaste. So we've taken up Lakṣmī Tantra again, and this is the beginning of the second half, part 2, from chapter 25 on to the end of the book. So if you haven't watched chapter 25, watch it now, or you will not be able to follow what we're talking about here. I know a lot of people just like to watch the insights video and skip the main video, but that's really not a good idea, because in these videos, I'm just giving my opinions. But in the text videos, that's Lakshmi speaking, and she's a much greater authority. So you should watch that first. Now, what is the meaning of the Sanskrit letters? You know, you can always go deeper into the absolute truth. In other words, first, in the Puranas, there's stories. And then, if you analyze the stories, you find that there's a philosophy behind it called Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means eternal, and Dharma means, in this context, the right path, the path of human life leading to enlightenment. So, leading to enlightenment, this means it's the path of sattva, the path of goodness. Sattva guna is the quality of goodness, and the definition of sattva guna is those qualities and acts that lead to enlightenment. So, when we see these stories and when we read these philosophies, we encounter many mantras. And a mantra is a combination of words and sounds that tends toward an elevation of consciousness, tends toward the realization of the absolute, tends toward Brahman, the absolute consciousness. But these mantras are made up of letters. And these letters each have a meaning. And so from the text, I extracted the meanings and I looked up each and every one in the Sanskrit dictionary. That's 51 letters, so 153 definitions. I looked up in the Sanskrit dictionary. I incorporated those into the text. And I also created a document with 2 tables. One table lists the letters in Sanskrit alphabetical order, E, etc., and gives all the meanings and their translations. The second table is the backwards listing. It gives the meanings in Sanskrit, but in English alphabetical order, and also the significance of those meanings and which letter they apply to. So there's 2 ways to use this document. And the first is when you encounter a letter, especially in a mantra, and you want to know the meaning, you can look up the letter in the first table and get the significance. And the second table is for when you're reading one of the tantras, either Lakṣmī Tantra or any of the other tantras, and you come across a word that is clearly a code. Often the secret tantric mantras are given in code in the tantras. So there'll be sentences that really don't make any sense. These are codes. So what you do is you take each word and you look it up and see what the letter applying to it would be. And in that way you can decode these secret mantras. So I put the link to that document in the description of this video, and you can download it and use it for yourself. So now the question comes up, how do these letters form these mantras and give them their potency? And Mother Lakshmi explains very nicely. She says, all these letters possessing luminous forms are parts of absolute consciousness. Letters are the source of all mantras. They are made strong by the Lakṣmī Shakti. They are reverentially praised, worshipped, and meditated upon by the adept by means of their names. They bestow great prosperity on the adept, produce and promote the highest knowledge in his mind. When used in mantras, they become parts of each other. There is nothing in this world of movable and immovables that is not produced by them. Although the forms of the mantras are divine and eternal, yet mantras are thus conceived to be produced by the letters. According to the sacred scripture, such mantras are full of efficacy. And in this way, they become the basis for inspired thought. Just as human thought imagines divisions in space, though it is actually indivisible, so for the sake of convenience are the divisions of letters assumed in a mantra. In other words, the absolute consciousness is described by or expressed by Tara, Aum. And this mantra contains all other sounds. And if you meditate on Aum, you'll discover this is true. But then, these sounds are divided further into 51 units, E, and so forth. And these are the letters, the aksharas. And each akshara has a meaning. And when these aksharas combine, they combine their meanings as well. Therefore, each one becomes a part of all the others. See how that works? This is why in the process of becoming, as taught by the Buddha, which we went over many, many times in our early videos, name and form are linked very tightly with consciousness. Each letter represents a facet of the absolute consciousness. And then when they combine together, they have creative potency. Thus, each and every object in the universe has a name. It cannot exist if it doesn't. Why? Because name and form produce consciousness, and consciousness produces name and form. There's a feedback loop. Okay? So when an object is given a name, then we can become conscious of it. And I've pointed this out again and again, that if we don't have a terminology for a specific phenomenon, well, let's pick something rare like Turiya consciousness, which is the root of all the other kinds of consciousness, namely Suśupti, Svapna, and Jagrat. But if we don't have a name for Turiya, how can we attain it? How can we even observe it? Even though we experience it multiple times every single day. Whenever we switch between some of the other forms of consciousness. You see, without that name, without that knowledge from the scriptures, we would never even suspect that it's there. And we see, the scientists investigating consciousness. I pronounce the word scientist with about the same emotional tone as I pronounce the word Republican or Christian. They believe what they believe out of pure belief. There's no basis for it. There's no proof, no authority for it. Just they scribble some equations on the blackboard and that's supposed to explain everything? I don't think so. And with consciousness, they have completely lost the play. They've lost the script entirely because without consciousness, all of their observations and their experiments would be impossible. So they claim to be evidence-based, empirical, but yet they ignore the empirical evidence of their own consciousness and other people's consciousness as well. What to do? They're going to believe what they believe. But we know there's a higher level of intelligence, a higher level of truth, and that comes from the scriptures. And the scriptures, in turn, are given by Lakshmi, Narayan, Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti, and the demigods, and so on, the sages. People with higher consciousness, people with higher intelligence. So if we don't follow, it's our loss. They have their enlightenment, they have their bliss and their insights. They have the wealth that they've earned by their sadhana. And we can freely partake of it because they share it freely. If we don't, it's our loss. It's our stupidity, not anybody else's. So therefore, the intelligent thing to do is to follow Shakti in her many various forms and heed her instructions and develop our consciousness so that we can become aware of all these subtle phenomena. Then in the next section, in the concluding section actually of chapter 25, she gives an example of how mantras are constructed by using these secret names. Taking Paramatman, Ha, let him connect Kalavahani, Ra, to it, and then let him join Maya, E, to it, together with Trilokāishwarya. The resultant form, Hring, is the supreme Shakti of Vishnu, which bestows on the adept all desired objects. This is the key. This is the secret word, Hring. And why do we introduce all these videos on Lakṣmī Tantra with the Mahashodashi mantra? Because it's all about Hring, especially the Panchadashi mantra, that it is its core. Ka-e-i la Hring, ha-saka Hring, Sakala Hring, Sao Aing Kling Hring Shring. So then in the very, very end of the chapter, she reveals that the Anutarika, one should know, is another form of her. Instead of the aforementioned Paramatma, Ha, insert Shanta, Sha. The rest is just the same as before. And this is my Anutarika form, Shring. So, Mahashodashi mantra begins, Shring, Hring, Kling, Aing, Sao. And in the next chapters, you'll see how all these bijas are derived from the root, which is Hring. So one can chant simply Aung, Hring, like that, and get tremendous benefits, or one can get even greater benefits by chanting the complete Mahashodashi mantra, which is explained in this series. Aung Tat Sat, Aung Shakti Aung.